Hi folks, so today I'm going to be showing you how to paint up this Fungal Queen from the Darkreach expansion of the Bones 4 line. Here we have the unpainted miniature, and with the bones you are not supposed to need to prime them, so I'm not priming this one to start with. So I am starting off with Dead White from Game Color. I'm putting this down because I wanted the mushroom to kind of have a bit of a glow kind of effect. I looked up some pictures of some cool mushrooms and got some inspiration. So this is just going to be kind of the base for the glow that I'm going to be using. And that color that I'm using to get that kind of glow effect is Nihilakh Oxide. I hope I'm saying that right. And I actually ended up switching brushes. I switched to more of like a watercolor type brush, just so that it didn't take quite as much time. I could load it up. And because this is it's a technical paint, it's a little bit heavier than like a wash. Oh, there you go. I've done the whole thing. And now I'm going to go back through with Xereus Purple, and I'm painting the panels, I don't know what they're called, of the mushroom this color so that it will kind of pop out against that oxide color, that tealy color. I wanted to go with this purple teal effect. I found some reference photos that it looked really cool, the two colors contrasting against each other. So this was a fairly tedious thing that, I just put on a podcast and listened to it while I painted that whole thing. So you can see it's painted up, and now I'm going to do the underside. I went ahead and put the Nihilakh Oxide, and I'm coming through with Daemonette Hide and doing these little striation bits. Striation? Words today. So just, I'm not being super careful because this is on the underside of this mushroom, so it's not super visible. If you wanted to take your time and really make this super nice, you could, of course, take a little bit more time on this. But I found with sometimes just painting minis to get on the table, I pick and choose what I spend the time on, what's really going to be noticeable, and what I just kind of slap on some paint. Right, so here I'm using Light Ochre to do the skin color. I liked how the yellow contrasted against the purple. Those are excellent contrast colors, so it really kind of made the body of the miniature pop out from her accessories. Alright, so there you can see I've done that. I also went ahead and painted all of the purple on the mushroom bits on the bottom. So you can see I'm testing out the fit. Took me a second to figure out where I was going to go back through and do some dry brushing. So I started out dry brushing with Eldar Flesh, just add a little bit more dimension here to the body, doing the whole thing. And I decided to dry brush and do the body first, so I didn't have to worry about the clothing stuff, trying to make sure I didn't get any paint on that once I had gotten like a base coat or anything like that. I find that just means I don't have to do less touch-ups than needed. Moving the mini all over the place and moving this really fast. Again, I'm using a makeup brush because that is an excellent dry brush I've found. It's just a cheap $1 e.l.f. Eyeshadow brush if you're looking to get an inexpensive but good dry brush. And this is a nice big one, so it covers quite a lot of area. So you can see the finished dry brush, and now I'm going through with Lucius Lilac to dry brush the underside of the mushroom. And I put the cap of the mushroom on to see kind of where the lighter bits would be. That way I could figure out, where I needed to put this dry brush. So I wasn't just dry brushing the whole thing. I'm getting kind of a little bit more dimension. Now I'm going through and painting the little bit of clothing that she is wearing with Waagh Flesh. Waagh? Is that how it's pronounced? I wanted to do a green here, maybe not super underdark color, but I thought it would bring in a little bit more color, and hey, maybe there is something green, or she brought something down from the surface. It does have a bit of a plant look to it with the clothing here. Of course, then later on I realized I kind of did a little bit of a like Poison Ivy-esque choice with it, unintentionally. Alright, so now I'm going back in, and with Elysian Green, I am doing some highlights, adding a bit of layer here. I didn't go through and do any kind of shade on this green bit, I just built it up with layers. So that gives you an idea of ways that you can build up different colors without using shade, but just using layers. And I'm using a much smaller brush so I can be very precise using it on a wet palette, and I did water it down just ever so slightly so that we're really building up those layers. And you can really see that's bringing a little bit more shape to it. I didn't get all the way down in the cracks and crevices so that that darker green could kind of be the shadow shade effect. And I'm now going in with Ogryn Camo to really bring out the highlights. So I'm getting kind of the very tippy top where the light would be hitting the most, picking those bits up, and just really bringing a lot more shape and dimension to this viney clothing that she is wearing. You'll notice I move the mini around a lot. I like to kind of see it from a bunch of different angles so that I can see, am I missing any spots? This is the next day, and you see I did base in her hair, but I realized that made it super Poison Ivy-y, so I'm going on back in with Abaddon Black and painting it black. Figured, you know, for an Underdark type creature, maybe having less color to the skin and hair and all of that would make sense because they exist in kind of a light-less environment, and so I based that in, and now I'm going through and painting the mushrooms at the base. Started out with the Fang to base it all in. Again, I got inspired by finding some like blue mushrooms, and I figured that was a nice, bringing in a little bit of a different color. And I do balance this out because I'm also going to use this color to do some highlights on the hair. So giving it that really dark black looking hair. As you can see, I'm going through with the dry brush, much smaller dry brush, so I can be a little bit more precise to give it that those blue highlights that you see in really, really black hair. It won't, sometimes you see people with black, really, really dark black hair that when the light hits it, it's a bluish tone instead of like a brown. So going through and doing that, that kind of just helps balance out the color so that that blue is in the bottom and the top. Now I'm going through with Fenrisian Grey to add in some layer and some dimension, hitting up all of those stalks of the mushrooms. And this is in a little bit more of a tedious thing, but I'm not being super precise. If I can move my fingers so you can see. I'm not being super precise, but I'm just pulling the paint up there. And the nice thing with when you're doing like plants and stuff like that, they're not perfect. They are organic, so, you know. And that's all dried, and now I'm going in with Thousand Suns Blue to paint the tops. I noticed a lot of mushrooms, the tops tend to be the more vibrant colored, even if they're all kind of one color. The tops are the more vibrant bit, so I decided, hey, let's bring a little bit of that blue in here on the tops to make them stand out a little bit. All right, now that that is dry, I'm going to go through and we're going to add in some shade with Drakenhof Nightshade, really deepening up those blues here, the crevices and painting it across those tops to add a little bit more dimension to those tops, since the Thousand Suns kind of made them all one color. But I will add some dry brushing in as well to just really pop them out. And I also went through and added this to the hair, so adding another layer of depth, even though that black is pretty dark. So now I'm going through with a dry brush of Pallid Wych Flesh. I got a little bit too much on there, so I just kind of wiped it off with my finger. And I'm using a very small dry brush so I can be a little bit more precise. And this is almost a white color, so it's really doing this light dry brush is really kind of knocking down some of the saturation of that blue and lightening it up. A lot of stalks to mushrooms are almost white, they have just a little bit of color to them, so that's kind of what I wanted to go for with these ones. They had that kind of blue undertones, but are on the lighter side. And now I'm going to go through and hit the tops of these mushrooms with Fenrisian Grey, so bringing that color back in, and just doing a super light dry brush to bring a little bit more dimension to them, bring the, some mushrooms kind of have a little bit of a fuzzy look to them, so that's kind of what I'm going here. I could have done something that was a little bit more high contrast, but I kind of liked having, because the purple teal is so high contrast, I didn't want to have too much going on with this mini, and I thought this was one place that it could be a little bit subtler in the color choices. Now I'm going through with Dead White from Game Color to paint in the eyeballs, and just have a very small amount of paint on the brush. I've wiped off most of the paint, kind of spun the brush to get a pointed tip, and carefully pulling it over. Then I'll go back through with Abaddon Black and just kind of ever so carefully dot, and I kind of even move in a up and down gesture to get the eyes. And one thing I will say with eyes, if you make them ever so slightly cross-eyed, it actually makes it look like they are looking at something instead of googly-eyed. And the final touch is going back through and painting in the eyebrows. It's amazing what eyebrows can do to make a mini look less goofy and more like an actual person. Eyebrows are important, folks. Alright, so there you have it, the finished miniature. This only took me a couple of hours spread out over a few evenings, and quite a bit of that time was honestly spent waiting for things to dry. So this is an example of kind of maybe not the most detailed miniature, but a really good table-ready hobby level miniature. I wanted to play around a little bit with having some bit more contrast, that kind of glowy mushroom looking color. There's a number of other fungal mushroom folks in the Darkreach expansion that I'm going to have fun painting up, and might do some videos about it. If there are any of the miniatures from the Darkreach or the fan favorites box of the Bones 4 miniatures, let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see me paint those, or Ryan, and we'll do our best to get those painted up and show you how they look. And hey, if you paint up this miniature using this tutorial, or you painted it and just kind of want to show us it off, feel free to tag us on social media and we'll take a look and let you know what we think. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you like it and share it with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe. We do make videos here every Tuesday and Thursday, but if you subscribe, it just makes it easier. A big thanks to our patrons, especially Bryce. If you want to support our channel, you can head over to our Patreon page and check out the perks of being a patron. Okay, I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye!